Hello, one and all, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every day. I suppose we should have a movie theme score going in the background because this is show 2001 on our little information odyssey here. So it's great to have you on board. Let's get right to our questions. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia is our reader today. What have we got?
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona, USA is asking, finding myself needing to remote into more Linux desktops. Splashtop is not working. Parsec is not working. How do you remote into Linux desktops that are not on your same network?
Alex Linsey is going to help you out here. Alex?
I think one question for you, Jack, is whether you're trying to log into networks, Linux desktops that are not in your network or at AWS, because I think those are, to me, those are two different things that you may be trying to do. So are these Linux desktops, are you building an instance in AWS, or are you trying to access a desktop in another network? And then the next question I would ask is, when you're trying to get to that other network, are you trying to traverse the internet, or the open internet? Do you have a VPN? How are you connecting to that other network? So I think that we would need to know some of that information. Splashtop should work, in this environment. So and so should Parsec. But the question is what are you trying to get to? Is it a network? Is it another local network, not in the cloud? Is it a cloud network? And if it's another local network or not non-cloud network, are you on a VPN with that remote network, or are you trying to traverse the internet? So let us know what those things are, and we'll come back to you on that.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri asks, will you confirm that tomorrow there is an office hour special at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 1 a.m. Zulu?
Alex?
Yes.
And yes, there is. I'm going to be hosting it, so I know there will be. I'll be here, and I hope you will as well.
Yeah.
Let's dive into our next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York asks, how does something like the Sony Ocellus aid in VR/AR production? And
there's a link there to that. Sony, I don't know about that. And AR and VR is something that Alex studies deeply. So, Alex, do you know anything about this?
The sound that you're hearing me is me running around very quickly trying to see what this video is. Let's see here. This is, let me turn on. Let's see. It's so great.
Ocellus. It's spelled Ocellus. So, an unusual spelling.
Let's jump into this here. So,
aid, the Sony Ocellus aid,
not to be confused with Oculus.
That's why I kind of spelled it out. It looks the same.
So there's the sensor, and so this is a tracking system that it looks like it's using an infrared sensor. I'm not sure whether it's a LiDAR sensor or whether it's just an infrared sensor that's there so that it can track it. So this is similar, probably, what my guess is, this is going to be very similar to what DJI has put together, except that I'm sure it'll be a lot more expensive. And so and just from skipping through these, I'm going to make a bunch of assumptions that may be accurate, may or may not be accurate for this, but I'm glad that I will know more about this if you ask again tomorrow, David. But what I'll say right now is what that looks like is an infrared sensor that is going to look out and it looks like they do have some tracking markers. So the tracking markers help it understand where it is and where things are, where the floor is, where you'll define those tracking markers, and they're a certain defined size, so it understands scale and location. And then it sprays out. It can either be LiDAR or it can just be infrared, and it's grabbing onto all the data. And in real time, what it's doing is it's tracking all these points of interest. So these points of interest are anything that have so a little bit of detail on them, little edges, little corners, anything that isn't repeating, it can grab onto. Just think of it as little hooks that it can grab onto. So it just puts a dot on anything that it thinks is interesting there. As the camera starts to move, it tries to track that dot in real time. Now, when this type of technology began, it's 25 years ago, we were doing this, and this would take seconds per frame while it kept on looking for the same dot. So it keeps on looking for the dot over time, as it's moving, you'll see dots appear and disappear because it loses track of them. There's too much motion blur. It just doesn't know where they went or what they did. So that kind of stuff starts to fade in and out. But if it has enough dots that it can still track, and sometimes the tracking, it'll start tracking a dot and stop tracking a dot over 20 or 30 frames. So you'll see these little lines as it tries to figure those things out, and it tries to grab onto all those. When it has all of those dots, what it does is it looks at the parallax between those dots. So it understands, it sees the movement of the camera, of where the camera is, as it relates to the dots. And then what it can do is, from that movement, from that parallax, it uses math. I know, it's crazy. It uses math, and it triangulates. If all these points are here, what would the focal length need to be? It makes it easier if you give it the focal length. But if it doesn't, what would the focal length need to be, and where would the camera need to be? And I can triangulate the position at every frame for that camera. So the idea here, I'm guessing by looking at this for 4 seconds, is that what this does is you put the sensor underneath it. You'll probably have to calibrate it to the sensor position. There's a little circle with a line on it on the side of the camera. You have to you calibrate it to that. You put it on, and what it's going to do is it's going to calculate the camera position, so that instead of having to, it's basically grabbing all the camera motions. If you have a handheld camera or you have any kind of moving camera, it will be able to track all that data, deliver that data back in real time, so that you could put a digital set behind somebody without having to track it later. So you could literally do it. What they're selling here is that it says for virtual production. So I think what they're selling here is that it can track that data, and that data, that's useful for both LED walls as well as green screen, because LED walls, a lot of times the LED wall is moving as it relates to the camera itself. It's not just a still image there. So those are all things that that it's built for, but it's most likely real-time location tracking. I'd be interested to see how much it costs. I bet you it's expensive. Because it's Sony. Sony's the DJI version that's expensive. DJI makes a LiDAR version of this. I don't think the DJI version would be as robust as what I see on this video. These are pretty strong infrared things. Now, you will have issues. There's lots of things with infrared. What kind of black? It turns out if you use a lot of cotton-based or organic-based cloth, one of the problems with that is that it, for some reason, that things like nylon when it looks black to the naked eye, it looks black to the infrared eye. With things like cotton, it looks black to the naked eye and white to infrared.
Oh, interesting.
It's a funny problem. So it can be a lot of things. Spectrum. Oh yeah. So, and David Brady said it's a $35,000 pre-order at B&H. So I guessed correctly. It's expensive. If you had to ask what the price is, you're not the right market. So anyway, so it's an expensive solution, but it looks like it's probably pretty robust. I'd love to play with it. We'll see. Yeah,
and sometimes it's $35,000 now because Sony is selling few of them and planning on developing the technology. But who knows? In another couple of generations, you think it might get less expensive?
It'll be $35,000.
It'll be $35,000 forever. Sony doesn't go start high and go low. It'll be Sony's version will be $35,000 forever. Other companies will keep on, like DJIs will keep on getting better and all that other stuff. But it's Sony's.
All right, let's go to the next question.
This question is coming from Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York. Alex Linsey, what is your current take on the Blackmagic Camera ProDock for iPhone 17?
And it was asked of Alex. Alex, dive in.
I am so excited. I think that's all I'd have to say. Like this,
cue the pointer system
regardless of whether you have an iPhone 17 or not, because this will work no matter what. It's not like it's a case. So if you look at this here, so what you see is you've got an HDMI out. But you've also got USB-Cs as well as headphone in and out. So for the dock of the two-way stuff that we've been talking about, this is the perfect dock for that as well. So this is a really good setup for many of us to be able to get, to build a rig around. But what it does do is it also provides gen lock and time code. So for the iPhone 17, the gen lock and time code is now part of the deal, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what people do with that. A bunch of us are talking about multi-camera shoots with the iPhone with a couple 17s and this to drive that all together. So anyway, so we'll see if that. I'm already working on getting a band for a test shoot. so we'll see where that goes.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Alex if he'd thought of the idea of using it for Vision Pro capture in stereo. Since you have Genlock and timecode, you could put two iPhones on a rig, mount them head to head, so you're using exactly the same camera for each eye, like using the current iPhone situation. And I think it does work with the 17 Pro and Max and the 16 Pro and Max and the 15 Pro and Max. So maybe if you've got a similar sensor on the older ones,
I think I'd probably get two cameras that are exactly the same. Yeah. One thing I built a 3D rig, and to your point, it's a great point that you brought up a memory that I didn't have in my head right then when you mentioned that. So so one of the things you have to do is, if you want to get the two sensors to be next to each other, the two sensors that you're going to use, you have to flip the cameras, right? And then set them up so you have one camera upside down, one camera forward like this. So they sit, one's upside down, and then you can align the lenses. And you really have to align the lens that you're going to use perfectly to make that actually work. And then the interaxial distance between those lenses needs to be an interocular distance, so about 65 millimeters apart from the two centers. So then then I printed a rig that you could push the cameras into and do 3D, and you could get close, but to your point, you couldn't. It wasn't Genlocked. So theoretically, I could. So now I'm going to go see if I can get. I only have one 17, so I'm going to try to find a friend with another 17.
I think if you have I don't know if the sensors. I thought the sensors are the same on the 16 and 17 for the main camera, but
I don't think so. Yeah,
they might be the same specs, but they're not the same
15.
sensor.
But you can also change the angle of the overlap because each lens is then separate. Could be separate.
I know. So and what you're talking about is convergence. So you have so now we have to figure out that, and then we also the key is that if the Genlock is working, you'd like to be able to start them at the same time, but it doesn't really matter if you start them very close to each other and they're Genlocked.
Well, it says time code, so it'll get you on the same frame in post.
Exactly. So, and I have a guy with an 8-axis router. so
what do you bet Tilton's small rig and those people are working on multi-adjustment rigs for these?
Yeah. So that's a really so Courtney we'll let you know when we have a rig that's working.
Don't hold me responsible for the cost.
No. Yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot of PLA that's about to be spewed out while we figure this out.
And the cost delta between two iPhones and a rig like this and some of the real 3D cameras is going to be substantial. So you'll have enough money for
the adapter is what,
gaff gear.
$399. Yeah.
I will say that I've gotten the opportunity to look at a lot of 3D stuff, and especially 3D stuff on big screens, and the stuff that's shot with two cameras as opposed to some kind of magic motion, of cutting cards out and everything else is so much better. The two cameras together would be amazing. So, yes, it must.
Alexander Knight, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, just so I understand, because when I was reading the product announcements about Genlock, especially with this product, they were talking about connecting it to other high-end cinema cameras. But if you had purchased multiple 17 Pros with these docks on each camera, could you actually Genlock the two iPhones together? Is that how it works?
Well, you wouldn't. You don't Genlock them to each other. You have a Genlock, a generator that is going to
need a clock.
It's going to clock. There's clocks, and then there's going to be tri-burst, blackburst or tri-level. And I'm not sure which one it's using. I have to go back and look at that. There's a Genlock, and then there's a word clock, and those are two different things, but they have to be sent. So those things have to be kind of synced up, and so I think that I'm going to guess that the impetus, they're probably thinking about this, but the impetus of this was most likely 28 years later when they were doing all of those, and they had all of that array of cameras. And I have a feeling that the folks that were working on that camera array said, this is really hard to do the way we want to do it because we can't Genlock them because they're slightly off. And this would be much smoother if you just were able to see Genlock.
Let's go to our next question.
This is from the QR code Rafat Al Sayed in Toronto's asking, hey folks, I'm planning a basic classroom PA setup with 2 small powered speakers and a wireless mic, example DJI, with audio going into Zoom. Would the RØDECaster Duo be a good choice, or is there another mixer you'd recommend?
Harshid Trivedi is going to start us off here.
What I would be careful about the Duo, it only has 2 XLR ports for microphones. So if you need to grow, I would honestly go with the RØDECaster Pro because you actually have 4 ports of XLR ports for inputs. So just be wary of your inputs. Sometimes you may not think you need it now, but you never know. If you want to connect something, you want flexibility. So always remember that more ports, better.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, the RØDECaster Duo, it's a good little mixer, and the larger one, like Harshid mentioned, is also a good choice. If you haven't purchased this stuff, I would probably try to steer you in the direction of getting a Rode Wireless Go, one of those, either the RØDECaster, the previous generation one, either the Pro or the standard one, or the new Wireless Go Gen 3. And the reason for that is because with the latest firmware, these consoles actually have a built-in wireless receiver, which means that now you do not need cables to connect the receiver to the system. In fact, you don't even need the receiver hardware that came with your Rode Wireless Go. You can actually just pair the transmitters directly to that. So that will really clean up your wiring. So if you're just buying this from scratch, I would seriously suggest going with that because then you get the full integration of that Rode ecosystem.
Alex Linsey.
I'm not sure the RØDECasters are the best solution for in-room mixing. Like, I just don't know if that's there's a lot of mixers and that do that kind of thing well. The RØDECaster is really designed to cast, out. And I think that the I/O you may find is not really built for what you need. First of all, I'd say that be careful with wireless mics, like little wireless mics near powered speakers. It's not a problem with the wireless mic or the powered speaker, but the issue you're going to have is that you're going to get feedback because those are omnidirectional. So think about what mics you might want to push into them, figure out where you're going to put your speakers. Those are things that you need to think about as you start to build anything in the room. The speakers have to be in front of where those mics are, and with omnidirectional, you're going to have to worry about it more. So in classroom experiences, we usually try to use some cardioids, super cardioids, well, usually not super cardioids, but cardioid mics, and then we carefully place them, or we use headsets in the room because we want to try to avoid the feedback that we would get from the speakers. You don't notice this when someone's playing out on the street because they're usually using an SM58. and there's a lot of off-axis rejection, and it's not going to pick up as much of that. And then they also tend to move their speakers a little bit in front of them to keep that away. So think about those things there. I mean, I have to admit, as a small in-room experience, things like XR18s are really pretty useful. I just saw the band that my daughter's about to join. They were playing on Friday, and they had the guy there had a Soundcraft, which I hadn't seen before. It's a Soundcraft mixer that has no interface, and it literally is just his iPad wandering around doing it. So you might want to look at things like that. I don't know if I use Soundcraft or not, but I think that I've had really good luck with XR18s. There's an XR12. The jump between the XR12 and the XR18 is a lot when it comes to like what's available between the two. So think about that as well.
Next question.
This one is from the QR code. Tim McDaniel in North Fort Myers, Florida is asking, regarding August 29 question on Resi, how many use Resi to broadcast House of Worship stream of sermon to remote sites? Other sites use Resi to pause stream to sync into their service flow, integration with Propresenter, other alternatives that would do the same thing.
Well, of course, there's a huge market in House of Worship sound and the rest of that. I haven't heard of that, but Alex may have. Alex Linsey?
Yeah, I mean, Resi, again, a Resi for House of Worship is something that is really popular. And I guess the question is always what you're trying to do here. And I think that the thing that if you're looking for the integration with Propresenter, if you're looking for, Resi to pause streams to sync to the service flow, I think that Resi may still be the right one for you. I don't know if there's a lot of other options to go with. One thing I think about is that people have some level of success just taking their House of Worship, taking whatever kind of service they're putting out, whatever denomination. They have they have some success with just streaming something out that they're already doing in-house, and some people enjoy that. The place that we've seen the best response is when people build broadcast versions of their sermons, because people are just listening to the sermons. They're very rarely listening to all the other stuff that happens there. They may, in some cases it may happen, but it's pretty rare. What really seems to be the most popular is just getting the actual service. And so restructuring, it's not really a hybrid event. It's, if you think about a lot of house of worships that are very large, have large congregations, will do 2 or 3 services throughout the day. And what some of them have chosen to do is start to do one of them as virtual. So they don't try to mix and match the two. They have a physical one, another physical one, and then a virtual one, or a physical one and a virtual one, or a virtual one and a physical one. So those are all things that people are doing, and it vastly increases the quality of what it sounds like and looks like and everything else, because they move the cameras in, they put everything where it needs to be. You're not working around the audience, and so something to think about.
Next question.
Talalak Lopez Waterman is asking, in California, USA, what platform does Vinci Resolve work better on, macOS or Windows? Sorry about the religious question.
That's all right. We'll give you a pass today. Jason Beige is going to start us out here. Jason?
This is the one kind of religious question that I think we are actually very much allowed to answer. I would say that on the low end, it would be macOS, and once you get into the multiple GPUs, then the PC would be better.
Cordy Gooden.
Bless you, my son, for you have sinned. Asking that religious question here. No, I disagree. If you have a PC, especially a custom-built PC with the difference is the NVIDIA RTX 5090, because if you have that card in there, it will blow away any of the M3s and 4 Macs out there, especially when it comes to rendering your outputs. It's those multiple CUDA cores and the native RAM for the on the video card speed up things tremendously on rendering and any kind of heavy duty operation in version 20. And if you look at the comparisons, you go down the list here, PC with an RTX 5090 is superior in almost all cases compared to the Macs, the latest M series.
I just said, Courtney, I said PC under the high end.
Yeah. Well, I said that my answer is Windows.
Alex, what say you?
Yeah, for general purpose work and ProRes work, you're going to find that the Mac is probably a little more stable. The whole ecosystem is a little bit more stable. As soon as if you want to do Apple Vision Pro stuff, which is what I'm doing, of course you have to use the Mac. If you want to use if you want to do heavy noise reduction and fusion, those are the two big things: fusion effects and noise reduction. You absolutely want to use a PC for that. It's not just that the RTX boards are faster; it's that you can put multiple ones in. so as you start to stack those up, Resolve's going to take advantage of those. And noise reduction it's a thing. Noise reduction is so time consuming, especially the intelligent noise reduction that's in there. It's super brutal. So we're talking a frame. A frame every couple seconds. It's really, really slow. So you want to really think about that if you have a lot of noise you want to reduce. Alexander
Knight.
Well, someone is, I prefer macOS, and it is highly optimized for Apple Silicon, but much like everything was said here, I grew up on Windows computers. I used to build them. I still think it's fun to build PCs, and you can build an incredibly powerful DaVinci Resolve computer from scratch using something like an AMD Threadripper CPU, which is amazing. And like Alex was saying, those RTX cards, which, when you get into those high-end upper echelon RTX GPUs, you can have a very good editing machine, put it that way.
Let's go to our next question.
This is a QR code question from Jeremy in Massachusetts. Jason seems pretty strongly against dummy batteries, but how else would you power a Sony ZV-1 camera up on a pole for 4+ hours at a time for live streaming sports? I typically go dummy battery into DTap or into AC power if nearby. Thank you.
Jason, you want to explain?
Oh boy, the pitchforks are out. Okay, just so we're clear, I'm not opposed to dummy batteries. I'm opposed to dummy batteries that aren't made by the manufacturer. And that was the issue that came up. You know, it was small rig this and it was, you know, generic that. No, so if Sony makes a dummy battery, then good, great, and fine. If you are putting a camera on a pole, my immediate thought is I'm just worried that it's going to overheat no matter what. But yes, no. If you have a dummy battery from the manufacturer, then no problem. Go with it.
Alex Linsey?
Yeah, I find dummy batteries are pretty necessary with the Sonys because they and I didn't know that Sony made a dummy battery. Does Sony makes a dummy battery, Jason?
Pretty sure they do. I have to look at the form factor.
I go through
almost
them
all of my
because
Sony camcorders have had battery replacement slide-ins.
Yeah,
so
I haven't seen it, so
they've
I'll
done
have
that
to.
for a long
I'll look more intently for it. But I've had a lot of other ones that are $13 or $12 or whatever it is. They eventually die, so you have to have a couple. You have to have one behind, one in the ready. Some of your Sonys, my FX30. If it's too warm, if the ambient temperature goes up too high and it's getting power from the USB-C that goes into the side, it will overheat where the dummy battery won't overheat. So it is important to think about a dummy battery. And again, I didn't know that Sony made one, so I'll have to go back and look.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I was just going to point out exactly what Alex just said is because the dummy battery doesn't charge, if you use the external USB-C to power the camera, it's also charging that battery, which generates heat, which makes the sensor overheat faster, especially in higher ambient temperatures. So with a dummy battery, you're much better off in the heat than you are with a battery inside and have it plugged in and charging.
Next question.
QR code question from Norm Clare in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. What is your recommendation for a rack mount solution to replace my current Mac Mini pin farm, which uses HDMI to SDI mini converters, and transition to ZoomISO, 8 outputs, and I prefer to stay away from NDI as my current workflow is all SDI and Fibre?
Alex Linsey's going to help you out here. Alex?
Yeah. So, Norm, welcome. You've left the evil forest of pinning. It's such a horrible thing. So anyway, so I'm so glad that you're exiting and we're going to try to give you a nice open field to work in, and because it is, once you get used to this, you're going to look back and go, I can't believe I was doing that for so long. As someone who had a pin farm for a decade, like I've done this. I've been in your shoes. So here's the thing that you want to look at there is that I wouldn't worry about the HDMI. So what you need is one Mac Mini, an M4 will do what you need to do, and a Sonnet box, and then you get for what you're trying to do, you would get a Duo card. So it's a Blackmagic Duo card. Now that's going to give you 8 outs. So, and that Mac Mini will not, I'm talking about the base Mac Mini. You don't need any more. If you want to get a little extra RAM, you can. But the base Mac Mini will do 8 without sweating, So you should be able to have the base Mac Mini, M4 Mac Mini, and plug it into a Sonnet box. You have a Blackmagic quad card, and then you would have. Now, what I would do if I was doing this for production is I would get 2 of those, so that I have primary and backup, and I would typically run 4 out of each one just to make sure that I just have I can always switch over and grab more if something goes wrong. So I would get 2. But that's as far as you would need to go. And so you take 4 out of each one. But each one of those Mac Minis is very capable of doing 8 out. And I don't think it would be over 50% usage, on those machines. And so the Sonnet box, there is there is an SE1 and there's the Sonnet box SE and the Sonnet box 1. Make sure not to get the SE. The SE, the box is too short for the card, but they're the same price.
Oops.
Sonnet makes them, they're the same price. I'm surprised, by the way, Jason, that a card system isn't made by OWC. I just want to say that. So anyway, because the Sonnet box is good, but a little clunky. The quad box, you should put 2 quad cards, 2 Sonnet boxes, 2 quad cards, 2. And then the problem is that there's not really any comfortable way. You're going to lose 2U to this because nothing really kind of fits into it. So you're going to end up with a kind of a shelf unit. I don't think anybody makes something that holds a Mac Mini M4. I could be wrong. A Mac Mini M4 and a card. Maybe Sonnet does make one of those, and then that would be what you'd want. The nice thing about the Mac Mini, the original Mac Mini, is that it was 1U, and I'm pretty sure they designed it that way. So it was a little wider, and it was 1U. It at first I thought, well, how convenient, but you realize that the original industrial design for the Mac Minis was that two of them fit perfectly next to each other in a 1U environment. So that was definitely thought out. The M4 doesn't worry about that, and so you're going to lose. You're going to end up with a 2U system that's kind of cobbled together. I don't know of anything that is made that makes that just slide right in, but that's what I would do there.
Next question.
For the record,
I'm sorry.
OWC does actually make a PCIe adapter. It's just I don't think that there's a 2U. It's just a 1.
Right, but it's that. Well, I mean something that holds a Mac Mini. And has a card. Sonnet does make one that has a drive and it has a bunch of other stuff, and all we really want is a Mac Mini and a card.
Do not speak of future aspirational
one shiny thing going across. I'm just saying, if you knew anybody there, let us.
I'll put a good word in. We'll see what happens.
There we go.
Next question.
QR code question from Sean Johnson in New York. How can I keep using 3 discrete ZoomISO accounts with my Zoom business plan, 10 users, after the 2026 shift from Liminal licensing to Zoom Events without paying for multiple expensive Zoom Events licenses?
Alex, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I think that, Sean, what you want to look at is the sessions license. So there's a pay-per-user sessions license that's $99 a year. So it's actually less expensive than your 10-user business account. And I believe that you should, for every sessions license that you buy, you should get one instance of ZoomISO and all the other Liminal products. And so that's how you would do it. So it should cost you, I believe that your business license is probably costing you north of $200 a month. 3 sessions licenses should cost you about $30 a month. Or a little less than $30 a month, about $99 a year or whatever. So I think that I believe that'll work. We'll try to get better, but I believe the sessions license is what you're looking for, and again, it's $99 a year.
Next question.
David Brady, New York City, New York, USA asks, was trying to find a way to route ChatGPT into the mic and speaker positions in Zoom. For a semi-autonomous chatbot, I can't figure out how to separate the two source/destination. It only hits default audio I/O for both on OS 10. Any thoughts?
We're turning around right back to Alexander Knight for the answer.
Yeah, so you need a mix minus. Now, I'd probably set up a dedicated computer for this. The question is, and I seem to recall there being a dedicated app for macOS for ChatGPT. So you may want, if you had to run it on the same machine, you would want probably something like Loopback, because Loopback allows you to inter-route audio from one application to another. And you can specifically route the output, the stereo output of that audio that's coming out of ChatGPT. You can route that back into specific audio channels into, say, Zoom, for example, and then, of course, route the participant audio from the Zoom app into the ChatGPT app. You're going to have to be careful with how you route things so you make sure that there's no feedback loop. But something like Loopback would probably work for that.
Jason Beish?
Yeah, the entire Rogue Amoeba suite is just awesome. And if you like Loopback, do yourself a favor, because you're very quickly going to figure out that the rest of it will also help you. Audio Hijack is the other one that I would use for this. And it really just depends on if you want it to be a core loaded and run, or just something that needs to be bespoke that you need to be able to turn on and then just turn off when you're done with it.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Recently, I saw an entire film crew, director, DP, camera operators, and PA only communicate through hand signals. Also, the talent was a former member of their team and knew the hand signals. What unconventional production methods do you use?
Courtney, dive in on this.
Well, I know a sound mixer, Mark Ulano, and his wife, Patricia, used to operate Boomform, and both of them, they had deaf parents. on one side, I can't remember whose. So they both knew ASL, and they would constantly communicate using American Sign Language back and forth on the set over long distances. And that worked great for them. They didn't have to have comms or talk back. They didn't have to have their headphones on. They could talk about where to put the mic or talk about, the actors' levels behind their back, as long as the actors didn't know the sign language. But I also worked with a director, a commercial director who is no longer with us. But he seemed to think that in doing commercials that you got a lot of better candid photography out of the actors if you didn't tell them you were rolling, which was problematic because if you're doing scripting dialogue, they have to say the lines. And if you don't tell them you're rolling, and so he had a code phrase, I can't remember what it was, like Jabberwocky or some word that you would never hear on the set. And so you'd hear that word, that'd mean roll, secretly roll. And so sound and camera would then be rolling and grabbing stuff. But, with sound, you pushing the boom mic in there and you're hearing the actors talk about their next job or, who they were going out with that night or what they had for dinner. It didn't work too great. I guess they got some candid looks, but they could never use the dialogue. So you have to kind of work that out. If you're not doing scripted dialogue, it can work because it doesn't make people tense like Clint Eastwood always just says, whenever you're ready, instead of, hit the slate, action, because that gets people's nerves up and makes them nervous. But it's more relaxing if you have some way of easing into a take rather than, getting everybody alert and on their toes.
Alex?
We often thought about teaching. I mean, there was some serious meetings inside of Pixel Corps about having us all learn ASL specifically for the reason that Courtney had of just being able to talk about things without, because there's so many times when you're across the room and you just want to go like, what is, this, and we just were like, if we knew ASL, it would work. It really boiled down to the only thing that we really knew in sign language was there's a shot from Meet the Robinsons where the big dinosaur is chasing after the little Robinson and he runs into the corner and the dinosaur hits his head against the wall and can't reach him with his arms. And he's like, I don't think this was very well thought out, Master. He had this little hat on his head, like, the dinosaur. And so our only sign language for looking at someone like, what's going on? Like there's something going wrong in the production. And our sign language for this isn't very well thought out. We would just go like this. Like we still do it all the time. We look across the room and someone would be like, what's going on? And you just go, like, this wasn't very well thought out. So if you ever see me do this, if you ever see me just do this, rock my head and hold my hands up, it means someone wasn't thinking about this very well. And so the only other thing I would say is that the only other odd thing that we do is when I do a lot of shots, we have a way of doing, at least at Pixel Corps we did, and I still do it fairly often if I'm training people. If I'm working with people who've done this for a long time, I don't bother to tell them because they resist it. But when we did it in Pixel Corps, we had a very specific way of slating things because I was processing so many plates. So we were processing, we needed this to be a machine, and it was very, very important that they did things in a very specific way, or I calculated the time it took me to do things. So the problem we would have when someone puts a slate in is they put the slate in and then someone would say roll camera, and the person would just call this thing out and then hit it. And a lot of times they go like this, and they'd snap it and they'd be moving. And I was like, no. So we set up a cadence, and it said you'd say slate in, slate would go in, roll camera, and the slate, we wouldn't say roll camera until the slate stopped moving. Like I wanted the slate to be in the center of the camera. You're like right here, okay, slate, and then roll camera, and then you'd hear someone mark it, and then they hit mark it like this, and they wouldn't move the slate. So they'd sit there and just mark it. They go like this, and you hear pull slate, and they pull it to the side and move it away. And it was always this and then out. And it created an extra step, and that extra step kept them from going like this, and they had to pull it up and then move it out. And whatever it was, it just meant that I had a clear slate at the beginning of every clip, which was very important to me, is I needed to be able to go through all of my clips and make sure that I had a nice clear slate on every single one of them. And it kept people from being lazy, and so I just added a little bit of rigidness to it. But anybody who's done it for a long time on a film set would be like, oh, we're not going to do that. But all the folks that worked with me did. Courtney may have something to add to that.
Courtney, you wanted to come back in?
Just one other thing on ROAR, we had up to 5 cameras, and you're shooting lions and tigers that, don't take direction very well. And also, they don't like you running in with the slate. We lost more slate guys that way. And you'd hear the director, who was also the star on camera, screaming at the top of the lungs, "Get that slate out of it! I see another slate on this movie!" Threaten you with bodily harm. So I had to develop a system that built Panavision equipment and cooperated with the electronics crew at Panavision to be able to built my own on-off switches for the cameras. So I had an indicator on the sound cart. Whenever a camera rolled, I'd see an LED. And whenever the camera stopped, it would trigger a bloop on the sound to synchronize it. So we had a sync mark automatically, and they'd sync up the first light frames of film as the camera shutter was slowing down with the bloop on the audio track. So that way we maintained sync with 5 cameras and no slates. And it was a nightmare to keep things in sync. I used to have to describe what we're shooting so that the editors could figure out what camera shots to look for.
Yeah. In my corporate practice, my biggest problem was that I would often get people who had never been on camera before, and I would look at them and I go, oh, they're really nervous and the rest of that. So the 2 camera operators that I mostly worked with, we just developed a thing where behind my back I would do a little finger circle, which meant everybody roll now, just roll. And then I would talk to them about something entirely outside of what we were doing and just maybe spend 2 or 3 minutes trying to find something that they were interested in, a hobby, where did you grow up or something like that, just to kind of settle them in. And then I would try to subtly turn us onto the topic so they never knew that the thing had actually formally begun, because ready and roll would always just collapse them in on themselves, and it would be really hard for the first few questions. So I think a lot of people in the field do that kind of thing when you're working with amateur talent. You just want to keep them comfortable going in. Next question.
This one's coming from the QR code. Patrick Heineman in Longview, Texas. We are adding an AVIO output module to our standalone Dante network and are now needing power over Ethernet. What are your top 2 recommendations under $500?
Craig Kadoki.
So there's not really enough information to give you a top 2 because we don't know what else your network is. Your options really come down to, for really inexpensive, you go with PoE injector. I wouldn't go that way personally, but that is an option. Excuse me. You could go for just a small number port PoE, like a 5-port PoE dumb switch. Again, not great. If you're going to replace everything, if your main switch doesn't actually already have this, I would be looking at the Cisco Business 350s.
Alex?
Yeah, and I would also lean towards Cisco Catalysts. Also, there's a PoE version of the Cisco Catalyst with like 16-port PoE plus, and those should all power everything that you're connecting to. Again, I agree with Craig that you may be looking for PoE injectors if those are at local locations to make. But I just was using a Cisco Catalyst for a show. I had a whole bunch of exactly what you're doing. I had a whole bunch of AVIOs, so I was. I had a whole bunch of powered speakers, and I wanted to deliver audio to 5.1 powered speakers, and so I had AVIOs. Just all I had to do was run Ethernet out to them and just plumb them into the XLR of the speakers. And then I also had I was taking AES. There's another set of AVIOs that will do AES in, and so I plumbed all of that into the AES. I did an AES de-embed. From I just had a lot of things I was kind of cobbling together for this. And so I did an AES de-embed, and that was using AVIOs as well. But all of that came out of that Catalyst switch.
Jason Beige?
Yeah, Patrick, I completely agree that an injector is not a long-term solution unless you really just have one that you really need to get done. Just get it in the switch.
Alex, you wanted to come back in on this?
If you are in the field, I will tell you the one thing that I've become kind of interested in is TrendNet and a couple others make these little switches that are they've got a Euro block on them, and so that you can just kind of build whatever kind of power you want to go into them, and they have like just a handful of Ethernets. Super useful in my Scorpio bag because I'm powering this is the Voyage Dante mic, and I'm powering this, and having that little switch in there to power it has been useful.
Paul Wallace. I'm sorry, next question.
This one is coming in from Paul Valhos in Austin, Texas. How would you more effectively use multiple Blue Parrott headsets with push-to-talk feature to cover a trade show like Ronny Hofsoy did at IBC? Zello and Microsoft Teams apps work with this headset?
Let's go to our next question. No, not next question. Let's go to Greg Kadoki.
So I was watching this in after hours when Ronnie was going around and handing his headset off to other people, and this question came up. I would go back to what we were talking about in after hours and basically say I wouldn't. I would go with some sort of a wired solution going into their phone that they're using as the main camera. I don't think you can get two in over Bluetooth ever. And just the added complexity, if you got a MixPre 3 or something small like that, even one of the Zoom devices and a couple of wired mics, you're going to have a lot more reliability. And in the end, you're going to lose out on the noise cancellation. But there's other options for that.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I concur. I think on a trade show floor where everybody has wireless stuff at 2.4 gigahertz, anything that uses Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz is going to be a reliability issue, because once you get more than about 3 feet away from the other headset you're trying to communicate with, you're fighting against all the other RF that's floating around in that room, especially in a trade show about communications gear or video gear. So I'd go with a wired situation, but that can trip you up in a situation where you got a bunch of people walking around. But depending upon anything that's 2.4 Bluetooth, it's going to be hit or miss on the trade show floor.
Alex Linsey.
It's an interesting puzzle to think about whether maybe it's a request for Zoom to be able to have two mics, like two sources. And thinking about how to do that with a phone would be kind of interesting for discussion. So I think that could be, one option there is to try to figure that out. I think that you couldn't take the Blue Parrots much further than they were taken on the floor there. But I do agree that, finding the problem with wired is that in a trade show floor is that there's too many people walking through it, and it looks junky as well. I think that we definitely we've had some challenges, and I think that I think we need to come with more hardware look at where all our signals are. I think that when I think that figuring that out, the hard part with trade shows also is there's so many things that are emitting so much RF that you end up with it. I do think that we may find that finding some way to use DECT could be a better solution. A DECT platform that's what like the Shure microflexes. They're not as high quality as some of the other ones, but the DECT sits in a different place than everything else. And we haven't had as much. The only time we've had trouble with DECT is when we're around something else that has a lot of DECT. so if you have a ClearComm headset and you have Microflex, that doesn't go well. The free speaks, because they're both sitting on the same. They're both utilizing the same bandwidth. But outside of that, we found it to be pretty rugged.
Next question.
This one's from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. I promise I'm not trying to bug you about the office hours hats, but I need to get my own hat printed. What vendors do you use for custom clothing and swag for your business?
Alex, hats.
The problem is that there's no general place that we go for these to get those things done, because and admittedly, so far with what we're doing here and then in my past, there's no one vendor that I go to because I am so picky about weird things. And so as a result, I go through a bunch of vendors to find just the right shirt. I go through a bunch of vendors to find like the hat that we are eventually going to sell here. Took a lot of vendors to go through to get to it because we just got a lot of different hats that we didn't like. That's the challenge, is really you're trying to figure out what you want. Number one is they have to be willing to send you samples. Like send me a sample of the hat, and I want a sample of the hat to see if it fits, and then after that I'll pay you for a sample that is like $70 or $80 or whatever for you to put. If they can't do those two things, then I'm not interested. So that's the first step. But we want to make sure that the thing you're looking for is the style hat. And I think the problem is that I have gotten so much swag in the last 35 years. I was a music director. I've been in trade shows forever. Speaker, all these other things that I look at the stuff that I wear, like someone sent me. And I think that greatly affects my willingness to buy cheap stuff, and so, and because I just don't wear it. Like I get it, it's sure, but then I don't wear it at all because it doesn't fit well. So that's the challenge, is that I haven't found a place where I just go to the same vendor every single time and get what I need.
I had to, for many years, chair a 5,000 person fundraising festival for a charity. And I have to admit that swag, T-shirts and hats and the rest of that was my least favorite thing to deal with, because it was always so much effort. It raised some money for the charity, which is a great thing, but boy, can't we get French cut T-shirts? Can't we get which kind of sizes do we want? Are the hats all adjustable, and are they the right kind of adjustable? We ate up way too much talking time, but good luck with it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, when do you think we'll see DJI products return to the U.S.?
Alex, your thoughts?
I don't think that DJI is out yet. I think it's January of 2025, so I don't think it's gone yet. And I have to admit that I'm saving money to buy some DJI products before the end of the year, because I want to make sure if this actually if it actually happens that they make stuff that no one else makes, and so we'll see what that looks like. So I want to make sure that I have the stuff that I want to have there, but I think it's mostly around the DJI drones that are out there. And so I'm trying to figure out whether I can get an Inspire before the whole thing collapses. And then the question is, will we be able to fly them? Because they could get theoretically blocked from flying as well. So we have to kind of figure out what that looks like. If DJI, for whatever reason, decided that, hey, if we're blocked, we'll turn all the drones off to apply pressure to Washington, D.C., that would definitely create a lot of upset. And so we'll see what that actually looks like. I get some of the concerns around security of a big Chinese company, but DJI has been pretty separate from the Chinese government, and other than accepting terms in China. But I think that the issue is that they're so far ahead of everybody else that there's a whole bunch of industries that this just massively impacts, and so I generally, representatives in Congress can't do anything until their backs are against the wall. It's just the nature of democracy. It's kind of why, democracy is a horrible way to run a country. It's just better than all the other ones. So as a result, we end up, this won't get solved until probably January 10th. There'll be some kind of extension that pushes it off until March, and then we'll forget about it, and it'll just kind of disappear like TikTok. I mean, TikTok was supposed to get closed. When was TikTok supposed to be closed? I mean, it was like months ago, and we're not even talking about it now. Like, we're not even it just kind of. so I'm hoping that that's what happens here.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I just wanted to correct. You said January 2025 is January 2020. It's December 23rd, 2025,
You're right.
supposedly, is when the ban goes
You're
in.
right.
And it's only certain drones. I'm not sure. Somebody has published, I found a complete guide to a DJI ban guide updated for 2025. Whether or not that's still accurate, because as Alex said, it changes depending upon whether or not they're even going to enforce the import problems. But the problem is it causes, because of the threat of it, it's caused a run on the ones that are in the country now. And so there's a very, that everybody's out of stock.
Nobody can find them.
Get them right now. Yeah, because everybody's buying them up in fear of the ban that's coming at the end of the year. So
it's funny
supply
that
side chains are going to be in tough arrangements.
Somehow the threat of a ban this far in advance has meant that DJI can sell every drone that they can make.
It's been really great for their backstock.
I know, and people are buying years worth of DJI drones going up to it, because again, there's not really any viable alternative to DJI. None of the other drones are anywhere near, other than building your own. None of the other drones are in the same ballpark as DJI right now. And so maybe this will create an opening for it, but it would take years for that opening to get filled. So I just think that, I think that the highest probability is that the competition for DJI will most likely, this is my long-term prediction, is that if things settle down in Eastern Europe, the competition for DJI will come out of Ukraine. Like that'll become the world leader in
studying.
Full stop.
Well,
yes.
Just not stealth. Just like they're going to have more technology related to not just offensive ones, but just as soon as they put cameras on them and their version, Ukrainian versions of commercial drones could put some pressure on DJI once things settle down there, because they just know so much about it. They've developed it under an incredible amount of existential threat, and that usually makes things really useful.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What stood out at Sony's IBC25 showcase? Its spatial reality display, the VENICE Extension Mini, Ocellus tracking, the PXW Z300 camcorder with a C2PA content authenticity, or its preview of the LiveU TX1 for bonded transmission?
Alex, which of those or anything else are you interested in?
I guess I don't really pay much attention to the large companies at these events. So usually when I go, so I don't know, because I haven't had, I will say this is one of the reasons that we've wanted to cover it. One of the reasons I was glad Ronny went out, but one of the reasons we like to cover NAB is because the things that are the most interesting to me are all the little booths, the smaller booths showing cool things that I hadn't seen before. Generally, my little radar goes towards all of the things that are 20 feet by 20 feet or smaller. Like what are the new things there? I don't spend a lot of time in the bigger booths because that stuff is going to be press releases and we'll see it all and everything else. But so I have less interest in that. But so I don't know which ones. I think that the tracking from Sony, if you're asking about the Sony one, the tracking is probably the thing I'm the most interested in. I'm sure somebody's interested really in the content authenticity. I don't think anyone's going to care. I mean, I just don't think, I think that news organizations will care. I just don't know if people will care about the news organizations. So I don't know if it's going to matter. I think that's probably, that would have been much more popular a decade ago. But I think that, I guess for me, I'm always wanting to know that's what I spent all my time doing, is going from these little booths all the way down, looking for things that I wouldn't see normally. And so hopefully we'll be able to keep on getting better and better at covering these events where we can show you those things.
Next question.
This one is coming from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Any recommendations on learning OBS for a beginner?
Alex?
Start streaming. Plug something in, start streaming, stream tests as often as possible, and then ask questions. We have a fair number of OBS people here. You can ask them on our Discord. You can ask them to the show. But the number one way to learn, for me, anything is just jump in to the deep end and start. I don't know of any. I'm sure there's plenty of things on YouTube of someone explaining it. But OBS is both quirky and relatively simple to get started. So I would just jump in and start trying to get a stream out. And by the way, anytime you're trying to get something out that has a lot of documentation, open up ChatGPT next to it and just ask questions. I don't understand how to do this. I don't understand how to do that. I don't understand how to do this. And it will answer almost every question. For a program like OBS, I bet you it will nail every answer almost every time.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. What are the pros and cons of using a service like Restream? I'm looking to take as much pressure off my GPU as possible.
Jason Bache is going to start us off here.
Well, the pro is that it pretty much works, and you encode once, and you only have to send it up once, and then you can turn on 35 or just kind of an obscene number of output sets. The downside is that you still need to be able to get that one good encode all the way up. So your output may vary. It's also pretty expensive.
Let's see if we can get one more in. Next question.
Phil Martin in London, UK. What does the panel recommend for white balance cards for PTZ cameras? Which size is best for filling screen for a X10?
Courtney, can we get in?
Well, I know Alex is going to recommend not doing white balance, but if you've got different PTZ cameras that have different sensors, you may want to try and get them at least all to the same white level. And use a big poster board that all the cameras can see at the same time and the same lighting. That's important, that they're all shooting the same card. At least that gets you to a common white point for several different sensors out there. And Alex has his own way of syncing up
Alex?
white balance.
Yeah, as Courtney said, I'll say never use a white balance because white balance is never the same color. Like they're all different. They're all going to be slightly different. You're never going to be able to dial in cameras if you're fine with they're all in kind of the same corral, but not necessarily in the same stall. Like that, then it's fine. But you never really get them just right with a white balance. You set them all to the same. If they're all the same PTZs, then they'll all look the same. If they're not the same PTZs, we usually put either if they have a LUT or we can put a LUT downstream from them. We'll use LUTs to pull them all together because it's the only really way to get them to be spot on when you're doing that correction.
And never use anything painted from the paint store, because if you go there, there's 7,000 whites, and they're all cool whites, warm whites, whatever. White isn't necessarily white. Hey, thank you all for being here today. We truly appreciate it. We want to thank our constituencies, the people who make this show possible. We want to thank first and foremost all of our producers, those people who have asked questions on the show today. Thank you very much. And we know that some of you asked questions yesterday, and we didn't get to everything because we had the big special show. And we tried to get it through as many. I think we still have some more questions, and so we'll dive into those tomorrow, particularly if they came in off the QR code. A huge thanks to the panelists, as always, for coming in. Thank you for being here and answering questions. And to our quiet, silent army in the back, those people who are working on the show behind the scenes all over the world, pushing buttons, helping us get things, planning for next shows, doing all the hard work of making office hours possible. Thank you very much as well. Our Tlaloc traversal today, 27,000 miles. That's how far you would have had to go travel to get to the expertise you were able to access today. 43,000 kilometers. That is 213 million bananas for scale. It is Monday, extra hours tonight, and then we'll have a 6 p.m. show tomorrow night as well. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Go play with my spherical camera.
Oh, got the magic camera back from Blackmagic again?
I got it for a week, yeah. Jason, you have to come up.
I was about to say, well, it's only 2 hours up, right?
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you know when we're going to do some more test shoots. Stand by.
So are you the only one that's producing content for the
There's a couple other people, but I'll be producing a lot more than they are. So I'm about to put out a bunch of stuff this week. So they're doing shinier versions of so Team 2 and Hugh Howe and did some longer pieces, and I did the first piece, and I'll be starting to chunk out stuff this week. So I'll probably be a little more prolific. Right,
eyes peeled.
Yeah.
See you all tomorrow.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.